telling you, this was the lesson of a lifetime. I was this group CEO in a huge office with a huge car, personal assistant, flying business class, living in five-star hotels in the US. And here I was, a fucking stupid nobody teacher in a no-name school, teaching 20-year-olds the basics of economy. I think that you can't really fall much more than that. Okay, you can clean toilets. That's maybe even worse. But my ego was shattered. Every day I would stand in front of these students and I couldn't say what I felt. I felt the urge to tell them, you have no idea who I was only a few years ago. You would not even be allowed to get close to my office. You would not even bring me a glass of water. And here I am teaching you, listening to your bullshit questions. So that was for my ego, but it was a good lesson. It was a very good lesson.
Welcome to the Haggai podcast. Buckle up. This episode is brought to you by Cards Biz, a business card too good to give away. This episode is brought to you by Better Weight for Life, transformational weight loss aid, led by U.S. board certified physicians, providing access to GLP-1 medications like Wegovy and Zepbound that are proven to help you lose weight and keep it off.
Joining us from Switzerland, Andreas, hello!
Hi, Haggai, hello.
So, how's the weather?
Cold and rainy. Typical Swiss, Zurich, October weather.
Fun.
Yes.
But the tax exemptions make it worth, right? It justify the weather. That's what we say.
We stay optimistic no matter what, and we're used to it.
So, I'm very excited to be talking to you. I mean, we've been, in the last few years, we had the opportunity to talk back and forth. And you have a very, I would say, a rich and diverse and entrepreneurial career that crosses many industries and even crosses at least half of the globe. Who is Andreas?
You put it mildly and in a very positive way, what I would rather call a complete chaotic journey, roller coaster of hopes, failures, backs, and getting back up on my feet to keep fighting to see another day. And I am a father of 3 sons, grown-up sons. I was married, unfortunately, more than once. I live in Switzerland most of the time, unless I'm traveling, which I'm doing quite a bit. I'm 62, soon 63 years old. So retirement is not so far away, but obviously it will not be a retirement as an employee will be retired and then stop working. I just retire in one function, but I will keep working in many mandates and projects in different countries.
Right. So I know we're waiting for a very interesting story, but how about we start with the end? Like, what are you doing right now? Like, let's start to not the end of a story. That's a very. It's like you see, you got. Let's maybe the current chapter. That's a better definition.
Okay.
Let's start with the current chapter. So, what in the book of Andreas right now? What is the chapter? What does this include?
Basically, the keyword that I already mentioned was retirement, which is not the retirement, the classic retirement of an employee, but entering, I would rather call it entering the next phase of my entrepreneurial private business life. Because as of today, I'm still in charge together with my dear friend and companion. We are both co-CEOs of one of the largest private school group of Switzerland called Academia Group, with over 30 sites, more than 1,000 people on our staff, and offering a really wide range of school types, trainings, and so forth. But at the same time, an education, private education, obviously was always a major part of my professional life, not only in Switzerland, but also abroad in other countries and on the globe. And at the same time, I serve on the board of directors in about 10 other companies in different countries. And this is what I obviously will continue once I resign in my current position at Academia, which will be next summer. So next summer is kind of a milestone because it will be, as I used to say, probably, never say never, probably the last time that I'm running a company as a CEO from After that, I will stay on the board of directors in all these companies, maybe other companies, maybe more, maybe less, for another, I don't know how many years, depending on my health, of course, but I will not be in charge operationally on that company anymore.
Yeah. So, how about like most people? I don't think understand how big business is private education. So, maybe we can go a little more into this. Like, what does the group do? What countries does it operate? Who are the clients? Like, kind of a little sense of the scope.
So private education has always been in Switzerland pretty famous, special. Within Switzerland, you have a vast market, private school market for K-12, professional business schools, hotel management schools. And when you grow abroad and you have maybe a family who wants their child to have a very good education, then you often hear, oh yes, I want my child to be educated in Switzerland. So we also have a lot of very famous boarding schools. Now, academia group, it's called a group. Why? Because we have different areas and offerings. We have the kindergarten and typical K-12 department, but we also have bilingual schools where the kids are taught in German and English equally. Then we have a dozen language schools that belong to the group. And we also, which is a little bit more special, we have integration centers. Switzerland is pretty unique because they recognize that if you have a lot of immigrants and refugees, especially refugees who come from a country of war. Recently, obviously, we had a lot of people coming from Afghanistan and Syria and Eritrea and Ethiopia. And then maybe the kids didn't go to school based on the war, didn't go to school for a long time, or young adults, they then never learned the profession, and so they cannot enter the labor market. So academia is offering their so-called integration courses paid by the government based on the simple belief that integrated people will, instead of receiving welfare, they will work and pay tax and pay into the social security system, and of course will not run around on the street having wrong ideas. So that's well invested money. And when you unfortunately look at France or England or other countries who don't invest in integration, that's what you see. Unfortunately,
You think Switzerland does that better than most of Europe?
Switzerland is absolutely unique in this way. We
Okay.
invest by far more money than any other country in Europe for training and education and social and the professional integration of immigrants and refugees by far. And the return on investment is fantastic once it's successful, because these people, they work, they earn money, they pay
Yeah.
tax, they become really part of the system and have no time to do things that you really don't want them to do.
So who are your clients? I mean, you kind of mentioned that some of it is like some, at least the paying clients is the government, but who are for the most part your clients?
Okay, well, obviously we have, according to our offering, we have B2C, B2B, B2G, government. B2C is simple. People want to learn typically a language course. They want to learn English. You, I can decide tomorrow I want to learn French, and I look for a language school, and then I find Academia Languages, which is our language school department, and then you are a private customer learning a language. Then you have B2B. These are companies. In most cases, they typically want customized language training based on the industry they are in. So they don't want to learn English, but they, for example, want English for bankers or English for construction. So then we tailor the course, the vocabulary, the conversation, the exercises according to the industry they're working in, this company is working in. And then you have, like I said before, B2G, and that's and the language and it's obviously B2C and B2B.
Yeah.
Whereas the international school, the bilingual school, the typical K-12, this is B2C. Parents sending their kids to one of our schools across the country. And then this is like 50-60%. And then we have the language schools, which is not so big anymore. Used to be bigger in the past, but has become smaller because it has been replaced by other offerings. Integration is also a very big part of what we offer, and is pretty much also one of our USPs, because academia here is one of the absolute nationwide, one of the leading schools for integration.
So how many students do you guys have?
Well, it's actually not so simple to answer, because when you talk about a student in a K-12, then we have maybe a 1,000, but they are full-time students. Whereas in the language department, you may have 10,000, but they only come 2-3 hours per week, and the turnover is much bigger. So the question would be, how many students are at the same time sitting somewhere in Switzerland in an academia group classroom? Because per year, we have obviously a lot more, because they come and go in the language department, they come and go in the integration, whereas they stay in the bilingual school, for example, for years, from grade 1 until grade 9. But if we're talking thousands, many thousands.
That's right. And you know, and there was an interesting question about all those companies like you, Volvo Education Space. Do you feel threatened by technology and
No,
and
we
AI
embrace
and
it.
all that? Okay.
It's a very important question, of course. But throughout all these years, when new technologies came up, and there were a lot, only recently, when you remember COVID, from one day to the other, the schools were closed in Switzerland, and we had to basically shift our entire curriculum from face to face to online. And then that's when we introduced Zoom, which forced us also to obviously work on the curriculum, because suddenly there are a lot of things you cannot do if you are online, whereas at the same time, you can do a lot of things that you cannot do face to face. This is one of our fortes that a lot of people were very impressed when our federal council declared the closure of all the schools. On a Friday at 4 o'clock, it was communicated that as of Monday, all the schools are closed. Over the weekend, within 48 hours, we shifted the entire curriculum from face-to-face to online. And a lot of parents were obviously very impressed, because the public school, it took them more than 2 weeks to come up with a setup. So for academia, I can only talk about academia. I don't really know the
Yes, of
other schools.
course.
Dealing with new technologies, the list goes on and on. Zoom is only one example. The list goes on. It's always the perfect opportunity to find out what can we do? What exciting new opportunities is this technology offering us? But of course, AI was a little bit more challenging, or is a little bit more challenging, because it obviously is more than any other technology in the past. AI is also obviously challenging in terms of, does it replace certain things that were done in the past and make no sense anymore to do, like write an essay at home? Yeah, good luck. The student come back and the essay was done by AI. So it forces the teachers to simply think about, okay, knowing that they will use AI, you can fight it, or you can think about how to use it in an intelligent way. And obviously, we are always erring to integrate, to using the technology, and to teach the students how to use it in a smart way, rather than, there are schools who try to say smartphones are forbidden. I remember when they said you're not allowed to bring your laptop to exams in the beginning, when the laptop coming up. Today, it's totally normal that you say, no, please, you have to bring your laptop. That's a good example for, you can fight it with stupid laws against it, or you can come up how to make it part of the exam, part of the curriculum in a smart way.
So let's say, I think now that we would have a picture of like what do you do now and kind of environment you operate. I mean, this wasn't kind of a smooth sailing or direct road.
No.
Like how did you start your business career?
So as a teacher, in the very beginning, I was working with kids and juniors and teenagers, and I felt very comfortable. So I said to myself, okay, if I feel so comfortable working with children and teenagers, maybe I can become a teacher. So I went to university, studied, and became a teacher, high school teacher. And for a couple of years, that was great. But then I somehow felt that okay, I probably won't do this for the rest of my life. Basically the moment that I think it came about 6, 7, 8 years after I started as a teacher, I was 28, 29. I said, okay, if I know that I won't stay in this position for the rest of my professional career, when is the moment to stop? And the moment was right away, because then I realized that the longer I will do it, the harder it will probably be to get out of this comfort zone. Because obviously, I don't want to, obviously, talk about the cliches of teachers' life, because obviously there are a lot of funny stories floating about teachers. And of course, as the spectrum is wide, from teachers who really do the minimum to teachers who work their asses off to individualize their lessons, and they work all weekends and all vacations to really come up with excellent curriculums and so on. So, however, my dream at that point was to have a private school, to build my own private schools. I have besides my work as a teacher, actually, from my mother's side, there were a lot of professional musicians. So I started very, very early. I think I was 5 years old with piano lessons. And I was with a Hungarian, I have a Hungarian background, with a Hungarian Russian piano teachers. So imagine a 5-year-old and a Russian concert pianist lady who never smiles, never says, well done, but only says, that's not good enough.
Aren't they supposed to hit you with a ruler if your hands are not
She was hitting me,
mentally?
but not with a real stick. So she pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. And then when I was very old, when I was a lot older, I stayed with her many years. She said, I only pushed you because I knew that you are so gifted that you might even end up with a professional career as a concert pianist, which I didn't become, obviously.
Little did you know, yes.
But she said that be happy, because if I am sweet and nice with you, it means that you're a lost case.
I hope, which is a way we only hurt the people we love, something like that, right?
The harder I am, the more it means that I really expect great things for.
That's really Soviet mentality.
Parallel to anything else I did, I was actually for quite a while preparing my career as a pianist. I gave my first concert when I was a young teenager, like 12, 13 years old. So when I was a teacher, I was at the same time also following a professional career as a pianist, giving concerts. And so it was always I was between being an artist, a musician, and earning money as a teacher, because obviously I was not earning money at that time as a musician. And when I was finally working as a teacher in these early years, my idea was, why do I have to choose? Why do artists in Switzerland at that time, today that's nothing special anymore, but I'm talking about 50 years ago, why do people have to choose between a professional career as a musician and a good education? It's either one or the other. Because if you practice 5, 6 hours per day, you cannot go to the public school. So my idea was, I was 26, 27, to establish a school that equally teaches the Swiss curriculum to get a good education, but at the same time is basically giving enough time to practice your instrument. At that time, that didn't exist. Today, there are schools like this in Switzerland and in Europe. And I was running around because I didn't have money, but I had the curriculum, I had the business plan, I even had the location. I found that believe it or not, an old castle empty. And I was asking the owner, can I rent this castle to become this school? And he was delighted with the idea. And I presented it to a lot of people, because there was only small little detail. I needed a lot of money that I didn't have. And
small detail.
Ultimately, I knew there is a very rich guy in Switzerland who runs private schools. He was very old, at least 60. For me, it was like a grandpa. And I said, I have a great idea. You are one of the leading people in private education in Switzerland, and obviously with a lot of money. I would like to present you my concept, and I would love to get you on board as an investor. And I said, okay, send me your business plan, send me your curriculum, your concept. And truth of it was unbelievable. But actually, 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from his assistant inviting me for a coffee with this gentleman. And he basically, in a nutshell, he told me, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is, I'm sorry, but I will not invest in your school. The good news is, though, you are such an impressive young man at your age, putting together such a business plan and such an idea that is obviously unique in Switzerland. I want you to be in my company, member of the management. So actually, I remember it was the spring of 1993, pretty much exactly 40 years ago. He said, no, 30 years ago, sorry. So in April, I was still standing in my classroom in the public school system. And in July, I found myself in a huge office with 2 secretaries in charge of 200 people running one of the departments of his company.
That's an amazing jump.
It was an amazing jump on every level. It was the first time of my life that I was actually working in a company, becoming overnight a manager and in charge of such a big organization, sitting in an office that was bigger than my apartment, and having 2 ladies only for me. I had no idea what they would do for me, but he just said, these are, at that time you had, as a manager in this position, you had 2 ladies sitting in front of your office waiting for you to tell them what they should do for you. I had no idea. I mean, I was not even 30 years old.
Yeah.
And that was really, I had the time of my life for a short while, very short while. It was like 2 years, because shortly after, the owner, this gentleman, decided to retire, take all the money and sell the entire group. This was a group of 8 big private schools, belonged to this group, to sell it to one of the largest private network of private schools in Switzerland at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. So he sold the group, and the only choice we had when he told us that I'm selling and getting out was to find a position within this large
New group. Mm-hmm.
That network was like 10 times as big as the company that I was managing, part of the management, or leaving. So obviously I tried to position myself and tried to keep a job in that network. And I remember the day when I went to the CEO, the group CEO, also a very old guy. I think he was in his 50s. And I was so impressed. He was a gentleman. He was obviously my former boss. He was like an entrepreneur, self-made millionaire, but this was a CEO of a large company. That was a complete different world for me. And I was very impressed. And he invited me for a coffee because he wanted to get to know all the managers that came with the purchase of this company. So here I was sitting, this young man in the group CEO's office, and he asked me, after a little chit chat, he asked me, so young man, tell me, where do you want to be in the future? Tell me. I want to understand your vision. I want to see, where do you want to sit in the future? And I said, in your office, on your chair. And he was laughing, and he said, I like your chutzpah. I like you're straightforward. You want my job. Well, I've news for you. You will never have my job. I said, why? Because you have a master in education, but you have no master in business administration, and never has had a manager this job without having an MBA.
So let me stop you a second before we move forward to this very interesting story. So at least 3 times in the story, right, during this period of time, you've shown a level of, let's say, belief, self-belief, ambition, that I think a lot of people don't have. That's even regardless of age, right? Like, I have a vision of an educational system that doesn't exist. I am going to be, like, yesterday I was a teacher, and the next day I'm managing 200 people, right? 200 people. You come in the first time in your life to this big, big CEO, right? Big CEO, and you say, I want your job, basically, right? So things like that. So where does that come from? Where does that come from?
Well, part of it is DNA. Like from my father's side, they were always entrepreneurs, and my mother was an academic,
Mhm.
speaking 5 languages and spending a lot of time in university. And the combination, I guess, of these two people was that they had terribly high expectations. So in my family,
If you don't speak 8 languages and do stuff and play music and get perfect grades,
it's
that's
it's
nothing.
example of a meritocracy. You are what you achieve,
Mhm.
and love is very much depending on who you are and what you achieve and what your results are.
Okay.
Was always under the impression that I am only respected, I'm only loved, I'm only okay if I am outstanding in every way possible way. And the other thing is that's one part, I guess. And the other thing is that I have a horrible personality in many ways, but one of the terrible ways is I'm never satisfied. I'm
Never
never
satisfied.
happy with what I have. That is one of the, by the way, one of the traits that my first wife, drove crazy. She said, I never see you satisfied saying the sentence, that's enough. It's never enough. As soon as you achieve something, for 1 second, you say, hooray, well done. But the next second, you're already planning the next step. And it
Mhm.
drives me crazy because like this, you never enjoy life. You're never happy. You're always just telling me, I will be happy if I achieve this. But once you have achieved it, it's done and you're already off to the next goal. And it's too bad for you because you never enjoy life like this. It's always what you don't have, what you're
Mhm.
after. So, and that combination of my parents with very high expectations, and at the same time, or maybe one was obviously forcing the other side, was I'm always after the next level, the next goal, the next achievement. Obviously, I'm not very patient, which is the other horrible trait. So nothing is fast enough,
Yeah.
which for my environment is today and already for decades that I've been a manager. I imagine, I know it's very hard to work with me because my battery, my power level, for what reason ever, but I obviously observe, this is an observation that I came across over the many, many years. I don't know why, because I'm not doing any sports, but my battery level is is a lot higher than average people. I can work 16 hours straight. And and I answer every even today, no matter like 100 emails, they all get answered the same day. I would not go to bed. It's discipline. I will not go to bed until my inbox is empty every day, until I achieved all my goals of the days that I had on that day. I will not go to bed until I solve the problem because I won't sleep unless I found the solution in my head. And this is for average people unbearable. Like he drives me crazy.
I don't know. Sounds reasonable to me. Sounds very reasonable to me.
So I think that is like a motor, like
Yeah.
something that is pushing me myself to the limits and above and beyond. But what makes it very hard for example, my family, my sons, my wife, they always said it's unbearable to live with you. I
Yeah.
mean, you get up 2 hours before everybody else, you go to bed 2 hours after everybody's sleeping and you're still working. On vacation, my first thing was to look where is a table in the hotel that I can use for my laptop. So, and that's been like this for now 40 years.
Forever.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I don't know if it will make you feel better, but there's this famous quote by Bernard Shaw, the playwright. Again, I hope I'm remembering it correctly. Is that the reasonable man adapts himself to reality. The unreasonable man accepts reality to adapt itself to him. Therefore, all progress is made by the unreasonable man.
And
And
it's that you say so because I had a colleague, she was a lot older than me
and
in
by
the
the way, to be few gender neutral, well, man, woman, but same, yeah.
course, because I remember it was almost word by word what you said. When I was in this first school company, there were many schools. I was in charge of one, and the lady was in charge of the other, and she was in her 50s. And she said, And all my colleagues were older than me. I was by far like 10 years younger than the next colleague, and the rest was even 20 years older. So I was a very young man with full of bullshit in my head, bullshit ideas, and nothing was fast enough, nothing was good enough, and I wanted to change the world overnight, which of course drove everybody crazy in the management of this company. And this lady was a very sweet lady. She saw me the way I was. She saw that it's not because I'm mean or because I am bad, but it's my own ambition that pushes me to be the way I was in India. And she said, you are unbelievable. From what I see in this first year that I worked with you, is you never, it's exactly what you said. Word by word, she said, you're the only person I know that you're not working your job. You create the job according to your ambitions, or the other way around. Yes, that was something that it's like in French, you say le fil rouge. That's like a continuum that I very often did something that if I wanted to do it and there was no solution, or there was no product, or there was no process, or there was no technique, I just invented it and said, hey, then if it doesn't exist, then why that I will be the first one to do it that way? So what? Because if that's the only way to achieve what I want to achieve, then I will do it. And that was in 2-3 instances of my life, the birth of a company that I actually founded because there was no solution to that particular problem.
So let's now go back, because the moment we kind of we went to this conversation was you're in front of a CEO, this big CEO, and he's laughing, and he basically saying, like, hey man, like you're hot stuff, but you don't have an MBA, and nobody without an MBA gets this job.
So that was an invitation. So I went back to university. But the problem was I was married and I had 3 children at that time already. 3 babies, very, very small. So I went to the University of Zurich and I said, is there any way, because I'm in a job, working 100%. I have 3 babies at home. I have a mortgage. I bought a house very early and the mortgage was killing me. That was also typical for me, that I jumped into a house that I absolutely wanted to live in a house. That is, by the way, has very much to do with the fact that my parents, as refugees from the war, came to Zurich with a toothbrush. And we lived in a horrible small apartment. Like my dog later had probably the bigger hut than the apartment that my parents, my sister and I were living in. And it was a nightmare for me. And I always said, as soon as I will make money, one of the first things is I will find a way to buy a house. And I did, with 100% mortgage, which was possible in the 80s. And of course, a huge mortgage that was eating up almost my salary. But we were living, my wife and I, with the 3 babies in a house. And so I said to the dean, I can't study full time. I can't quit my job. I need the income. I said, sorry, there's no way. We are a university. You have to come into lectures, and will take you 5 years. And in 5 years, you will have your master degree, bachelor and then master degree. And then, okay, that's not working for me. So then I was searching the market and I found actually a distant learning university where 90% was distant learning. At that time, you were sent booklets. Every month you received a box with all the subjects. Every book one was accounting and the marketing and human resources and the macro and microeconomy, all these books that you had to do the books. And at the end of every booklet, there was an exam. You had to write the exam, send it by snail mail and get it corrected and marked. And then you could continue the next month. So it's perfect. And only 10% was, sometimes you had to do a weekend at the university with case studies, blah, blah, blah. So, and that was a 4-year program. So I said, okay, 4 years.
Better than 5. Better than 5.
Better than 5. It was actually 2-year bachelor in business administration and 2-year master in business administration. Most of it, like I said, and then I called the dean and I said, listen, this is a 4-year program. Is there any way to do it faster than 4 years? Well, actually, the master, no, that's a 2-year program. There's no way around. But the bachelor, if you accept to get 2 boxes per month instead of 1. You could do it in 1 year, but that's crazy. I mean, the average is 20 hours. That would be like 40 hours. Mathematically, it doesn't work. So leave it up to me. So I received 2 boxes per month. And I remember I had in my house, I had an office with a huge white wall, and with A3 papers, I plastered the entire wall, and I wrote for every day, every topic, how many pages I have to study per day to finally finish the 8. It was average was 8 booklets per month in one topic. So I got 16 to actually get to an end every month with all the 16 booklets.
Yeah.
And I calculated the time, and I calculated how much time I have to. So I ended up with 5 hours per day, which is 35 hours per week. Actually, the +5 was on the weekends, which required me to get up every day at 4 o'clock, go to my office in the company, which was not far away, and from 4:30 until 8 o'clock, 2.5 hours, I was studying. Then my staff came and blah, blah, blah. Then at 5 o'clock, I would go home, take care of the babies, kiss them goodnight. And at 7 o'clock, I was back in the office until 10. 3 years later, I walked into the office of the CEO and presented him my master degree.
So first of all, amazing. I have to say that I resonate with the story on a personal level very, very much. And I think something that people that don't have that, I don't know, crazy situation in their life, they don't understand how much you can actually do in a day if you're very, very determined. And to tell you, and I don't know if I told you this, but here's my version of your story. So I did my bachelor, I did a bachelor in economics, and I did an LLB in law. So basically a law degree in economics. And similar to you, I worked full time, which again, I was young, I didn't have to sleep, very similar story. But the difference is we had laptops, and I would literally be in class doing work for IBM. I was a chief IT architect security. But then I went to do my master's, and I went to Boston College, and I signed up to do an MBA and a master in finance. And that's supposed to take, if you do the summer courses and it's everything, that's supposed to take 2 to 3 years at best, like, assuming you don't pay. And I did it in a year and change. Because I was going, wait a second. I was doing 2 degrees and working full time. And now you want me to do this? This is easy.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
This is easy. And I worked also, but it wasn't as intensive as the thing. But in a year, and basically I was just like, in 1 year I was done and everything, and I had to do I was meeting 3 points. So I did a whole semester just for 1 course or something like that. That's fine. But I was basically, I would say, failure of my planning. And
I remember when we went on vacation, because my wife at the time was a teacher also, and with our 3 babies, and we would go to vacation, normally in Italy or Côte d'Azur, which is close to Switzerland, a few hours drive by car. And I remember one huge suitcase. Of all the suitcases that we had, one huge suitcase was packed with the booklets that I was supposed to finish within the 2 weeks that we were on vacation, which meant that obviously I got up way before my wife and the children woke up, and I went back to study in the hotel room. Actually, we rented little houses in France where I had a room where I could study. And again, always tried to find a way to satisfy the needs of my family, of my wife and children, but at the same time pursue my goal. And the good news is, and this is basically the happy end of this part of my life, when I went back to that CEO and showed him my degree, he was really impressed. He said, "Young man, I never would have imagined that when I told you, I remember I told you, without MBA, you will never have my job. Never would I have imagined that you will come back in 3 years presenting this degree to me. In our corporation, we have 12 companies. You will be the CEO as of next month of one of the companies who is suffering from a crisis. Here is the deal. If you manage a turnaround of this company, you will keep the company. If not, we close the company and you lose the job."
No pressure.
No pressure. Yes.
No pressure.
Of course. I don't want to get into details. Of course, you need it's not always only hard work, because a lot of people work their asses off and
Yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
ever get successful. So I would never be arrogant to say I worked my ass off and that's
So hard work is not enough. It's
hard
never
work
enough.
enough. There is a lot of ingredients. Hard work, of course, is a prerequisite, but not enough to be successful. You need a lot of the right time at the right place, meeting the right people, which happened to me more than once. That I
Yeah.
met the right people at the right time, and was pure luck, because and I had landed in the first 3 months. Huge. The company, by the way, that was running, and this was important because in my story, because this was the shift away from private schools and children and teenagers to the corporate world, and to the corporate world of training, like corporate training, because the company that I was handed over was a corporate training provider. So suddenly the customers I had were companies. And I remember in the first 3 months, I was obviously doing what you have to do, visiting companies every day, 2-3 appointments to sell them our management courses. These were management courses that we offered. And one day I was presenting to a company, and the HR manager said, "Wow, this is the perfect time. I need to set up an entire learning and education department because we took over a company, blah, blah, blah. There are 2,000 people need training." And I sold him an entire concept, which turned the company within 3 months from losing money to making money. So I achieved the goal, and obviously the company was not closed.
So how much, like, okay, it's a bit of a philosophical question, right? But let's take that as an example at this moment. But I'm always fascinated by the concept of luck, right? Like luck. Like, so, you know, do you have an opinion on luck? Do you have an opinion about how we create luck in the
Yes,
business sense?
very much so, because very much later in my life, I ended up living in Vietnam. It's another phase of my life. And I was invited many, many times to universities to speak in front of young MBA students about luck and career planning and opportunities. And obviously, I will not give you my speech. That was a 3-hour speech anyway. But in a nutshell, and this is very much something that I believe in, is yes, you need luck, but luck is not something that falls from the trees. You can create basically the foundation to find luck. Very easy example. Yes, I was lucky that exactly the time when this HR manager needed a huge effort, a huge concept with 30 different courses for the company, I walked through the door. Now you can say, oh, that was pure coincidence. Yes and no. Yes, because obviously I was lucky that this guy needed at that time exactly what I had to offer. No, no luck. Why? It's not only luck, because he was one of 100 companies that I visited.
Yeah, in that period. Yeah.
99 said thank you, but no thank you. It was in a way not so much luck. It was what I always tell the students. No, this is not what I call luck, but I call it create opportunities. And it's kind of, you can say, statistics. The more opportunities you create, the higher the probability that something will work out.
Even if you want to win the lottery, you have to get a ticket.
Yes. And
The
even
minimum.
find
Even
yeah. And when I teach young managers, I tell them, maybe I'm not a genius. I'm definitely not. But there's one thing I can probably do better than many others. I can walk longer, and I have more stamina, and I can suffer. My tolerance of suffering is much higher, because when I compare when I was so-called lucky, something really was happened, something good happened to my life, professionally at least, it was in a way, in hindsight, when I look back, how did this happen? It was always at the end of a long and hard battle that something happened that in that moment you would say, oh, he was lucky. But because then but if you say that, you would ignore everything that I did before I so-called got lucky.
so let's go back to the journey of suffering. It's like And
I'm a-
it's like so you through hard work and luck you
it, the company was sold.
okay
It was so successful after 2 years that this big CEO that I mentioned in the beginning didn't tell me that behind my back, he was negotiating with an even bigger German company that was again 10 times bigger than my Swiss corporation, because Germany is always 1 to 10. So this
yeah
company was actually one of the leading publishing houses of Germany. Like, there's Bertelsmann and there is Klett, and this was one of the leading publishing houses in Germany. One day he told me, listen, Andreas, it was actually shortly before Christmas 1999. He says, listen, you did a great job. Actually, you did a fantastic job. We have become a really successful corporate training provider. And I was talking to one of the biggest publishing houses in Germany, and I'm friends with the CEO, and this CEO told me that they envy us because we have such a successful corporate training department, and he would love to have this B2B business corporate training combined with e-learning. And at the time in the 90s, e-learning was not where it is today, of course.
Yeah.
I have a dream, said the other CEO. I want to become the leading e-learning corporate training provider of Europe. But I have nothing. I have no experience in learning. I have no experience in corporate training. I have no experience in B2B because the publishing house was in B2C. And so my CEO said, but I have exactly what you're looking for. And if you want, I can sell the company, the manager who did all this, and the team and the content. But that's not what he told me. He told me at that famous meeting before Christmas, he said, listen, Andreas, I have news. I will sell your company to a German publishing house. Here are the choices. You can leave, quit. You can become the manager of the Swiss subsidiary because they will set up subsidiaries in Europe, and they will purchase a couple of other companies. One will be developing e-learning content. One will develop a learning management platform. One will be doing consulting, and one is what you are doing, selling corporate training. And they will put this all together to a new holding, to a new corporation, and they will look Europe-wide, worldwide for a group CEO of this new setup. And the goal is actually an IPO. In 5 years, this will be an IPO. Do you want to be part of it? Do you want to? So, and you obviously, you know what I answered. I said, no, I want to be the group CEO. That's not in my hands. So I went to see the chairman of that publishing house, which at the time was he was close to 70 years old, fifth generation owner of the publishing house. It was in private hands. Very impressive gentleman, very educated, living in a huge villa in Germany. I remember when I had to go to him, not in the office, I had to go to his villa privately and present myself. And long story short, I became the group CEO, but I had to move to Munich. So my Christmas, that's why I mentioned Christmas. My Christmas gift to my family, to my wife was, listen, honey, I have an unbelievable opportunity. I can become group CEO of a corporation, like literally. And they want to do an IPO in 5 years. We will become multi-millionaires, but we have to move to Munich. So I said, okay, I start packing. And a few months later, for a while, I was commuting between Zurich and Munich until we found a house and the kids went to school in Munich. So, and we moved to Munich and we lived there. And I cut short. The IPO never happened, and we never became multi-millionaires. Actually, the company went bankrupt. Why? Because this is something nobody could foresee. The 9/11 attack 2001 ended our business in the US. And then at the same time, it was the internet bubble, the new economy, the bubble burst. And for a while, for more than a year, the whole e-commerce, e-learning, e-market
Yeah.
was dead. So here I was in Germany, in Munich, and I said to my wife, I'm sorry, but we have to pack and go back to Switzerland because there is no way I will find a job in Germany because there were thousands of managers on the street. They found themselves on the street overnight after 9/11. So we went back to Switzerland and I had nothing. No, actually I had something. A huge mortgage on a villa that I, stupid young guy, bought knowing or believing that I would be a multimillionaire very soon. So why not buying already now with money that I didn't have yet, a huge villa. So now I was in Switzerland, out of a job, no income, and a huge mortgage on a villa in Germany that we were not living in anymore. That was back to zero. It was really literally, at that time I was 38, 39, and we had nothing, no job, no money, no income, and a huge mortgage on a villa in Munich. That was when I really hit bottom. And there was no way I would find a job. So what can I do? I opened my own company, a consulting company on my own, which was the only way to get work.
Doing what? What was the consulting?
Offering everything that I had done the last 15 years. Strategic consulting in learning, in corporate learning, strategic consulting in reorganizing the learning and HR department, strategic consulting in any kind of organizational development or corporate training development projects. And thank God, I could say again, I was lucky, but we already discussed why it was not so much lucky, because I worked my ass off.
We talked about this in the past. So I know you said about the hustling. You kept hustling nonstop.
I have 3 children and a house in Munich and a house in Switzerland now. And I knew exactly, like when I did my studies with the booklets, I knew every month to survive, I need this amount of money. And I looked every morning in the mirror, slapped my face and said, asshole, move your ass. There is no excuse. You can't be tired. You can't be disappointed. You can't be depressed, because nobody gives a shit how you feel. Get up and work and fight to feed your family and to get out of this hole. And that's what I did for years. And thank God, my consulting was very successful. And I did meet, and actually beyond, the amount that I needed every month. That was 2003 until 2008. And then the financial crisis happened and I was back to zero. Why? Because I was very deep into project work as a consultant. It's just very with a deep expertise in corporate training that I had developed now over the years.
Yeah.
And I remember the day when I received phone calls from my customers, one after the other. I'm very sorry to say we have to stop the project. I'm very sorry we have to stop the financial crisis now. And we are, unfortunately, what was excellent in the 5 years before became now my grave, because my 80% of my customers were in financial services. I was consulting the big banks in Switzerland. I was consulting the big insurances in Switzerland. I was consulting the big professional firms, Pricewaterhouse, KPMG, and they all
got hit. Yeah.
They were the first ones to be terribly hit by the financial crisis. And obviously they were the first ones who said all our projects were canceled as of today, immediately. So within 1-2 weeks, I went from a pipeline full of huge consulting projects to zero, no income, no project, no mandate, no customer. So that was horrible. For a moment, I was under the false impression, which, by the way, it was the last time in my life that I ever thought I'm safe. After that, a lot of bad things happened in my life, but it never made me feel, when I was out of that hole again, I'm safe, all good, this will never happen. Ever after, I thought, be prepared, no matter how safe you might feel now, no matter how successful you are now, no matter how much money you make now, it can be over the blink of an eye. It's important. That was a very important lesson, because I was so safe at that moment, because I was so diversified. I had so many customers. I couldn't imagine. I mean, you can lose a customer, you can lose 2 customers, but I was not for a second. I would imagine you can lose all.
You can lose industries. You can basically lose industries.
So, but I remembered that during my time in corporate training and working for these big education corporations, I had a name and I had a really good network and a lot of friends. And I was not shy. I was never a person, who was beating around the bush. So and I had no choice anyway with my family. Yeah. So I called again, same old game, hit the phone, call everybody you know and tell them the truth. So what I did was I called every university, every business school in the country where I knew somebody or I knew somebody who knew somebody and told them, look, here's the truth. I have no job, I have no income, and I lost all my consulting. And if you have a course for me to teach marketing, management, HR, no matter,
Yep.
bachelor level, master
I'll take
level,
it. I'll take it.
you don't have to ask me, would you do that? Because the answer is yes. So I really ended up working in shitty schools, teaching shitty courses with shitty students, lazy, not interested. I found myself, and it was I'm telling you, this was the lesson of a lifetime.
That's
Because
a lesson
came
of a
out-
lifetime.
this was a lesson of why? Because only if I was this group CEO only short time ago in a huge office in Munich with a huge car and the CEO as personal assistant, flying business class, living in five-star hotels in the US. And here I was, a fucking stupid nobody teacher in a nobody, no-name school, teaching 20-year-olds the basics of economy. I think that you can't really fall much more than that. The two extremes. Okay, you can clean toilets. That's maybe even worse. But it was, my ego was shattered. Every day I would stand in front of these students and I couldn't say what I felt, but I felt the urge to tell them, you have no idea who I was only a few years ago. You would not even be allowed to get close to my office. You would not even bring me a glass of water a few years ago. And here I am teaching you, listening to your bullshit questions and teaching you things so that was for my ego, but it was a good lesson. It was
Yeah.
a very good lesson to deal with yourself, to deal with your own issues after, you could say, kind of a nice career
Yeah.
from all the steps until I finally ended up in Munich in this corporation as a group CEO, and then going all the way back down, first being a consultant running after every project. And then that was kind of already a big step down, but at least it was kind of, I still had some ego, but then it
Yeah.
was another steep fall to becoming to teaching in a business school. And that was very, very difficult. I was terribly fighting my demons. So in a way, like, what the fuck am I doing here? I mean, come on, this is not me. I mean, why? What did I do to deserve this? And then luck was around the corner. Really unexpected. But the dean of one of the universities I was teaching, in one university, they really liked my work. So after teaching a year bachelor, they offered me a master course. Now I was teaching master students. I was already a little better because they were already a little bit more educated and the content was more interesting. Now they offered me to teach an executive MBA course.
Yeah.
So these people were already professionals, managers who wanted to do an EMBA. So I was teaching this EMBA. I really enjoyed that. Finally, I was still a teacher at the university, but at least I had some self-respect, self-esteem again, teaching in an EMBA. And this dean told me, listen, we have an idea, we have a project. We want to cooperate with a university in Vietnam and offer a so-called dual degree EMBA, which is a Swiss and a Vietnamese EMBA degree for students, entrepreneurs, managers in Vietnam. But to offer that official Swiss degree, 50% of the professors have to be Swiss nationals from Switzerland, from the Swiss side. Would you consider moving to Vietnam and teaching EMBA in Hanoi? That's what I did. And that started a whole new life. And in a way, it's where I now is started in a way with this change, because I was suddenly in Vietnam and somebody again, and a lot of projects came out of that. And because I was in a different world, in a different culture, and I was again on my own. And at the same time, I had a dear partner who had an idea with me to establish a company. The company was called Kulanko, which is an abbreviation of culture, language, and communication, which was again going back to in the beginning, we said if you don't have a solution for a problem, then maybe, or if there is no market, if there is no company offering what for a problem, then you have to do it yourself. That's what we did.
Yeah.
We understood that there is a huge so-called relocation industry, relocation services for expats around the world. And one of the services they need sometimes, or in most cases, is language training. But the companies don't know language schools in 60, 70, 80 countries. So our idea was to establish a company that all we do is we find the right school in every city of the world, and then we connect the school with the company. And the company and the school will give us a commission, like an agency.
Yeah.
So we established Kulanko, and we thought, okay, Europe is fine. But then he did the technology because it was very much technology based. And I will do the sales. My job will be to find the schools and to connect with the companies and find the companies and bring them together. I went to the big companies. I said, here, listen, I can find you in every European country. I can find you in the city you need the right language school. Shortly, I found out they said, that's nice, but we don't really need Europe. We need the world. Come back when you have a school in Mumbai, when you have the right school in Kirkutsk, when you have the right school in Cape Town. Okay. So again, we go back to the exercise when I was studying MBA in the morning and in the evenings. So now I was teaching in Vietnam, I was teaching and whenever there was a break, because the MBA were like blocks,
Yeah.
and in between, I would sit in a plane, fly around the world and find the schools. And to make a long story short, after 5 years, Kulanko was offering as a one-stop shopping solution 360 cities in 85 countries that I almost all of them had visited personally to of course see the school if it's the right quality, if they have the right teachers, put it in our portfolio. And now I went back to the same company and said, listen, with Kulanko is a one-stop shopping solution. Name me the city you need a school. I will tell you immediately. I can give you 2, 3, 4 in big cities, of course, even more. New York, London, we had 10 schools. In small cities, we had maybe 2. And that was really growing fast.
So explain a bit so explain the motivation of the companies to do this and why did it grow fast?
Because we were, believe it or not, the only company in the world who did this.
What was the problem? Like what problem was the
problem that you have? Okay, so it's 2 levels. The first level is the company itself who has an expat, and they tell this expat, listen, Bob, we want to open a subsidiary in Japan. Headquarters is in London, and now we want you to pack up, take your family, and move to Tokyo. And then they so-called got an expat package. And the expat package included housing, of course, car, tax relief, health insurance, and language training for him and his wife normally, Japanese in this case. And we offered the company a pre-departure Japanese course in the city where he came from, London, in the best school that we had already pre-evaluated, and the best Japanese school in Tokyo after arrival. According to the budget, according to the allowance, so-called, this gentleman had. Sometimes it was a lump sum fee, sometimes it was an amount of hours. Now, later on, this industry was growing very fast. 20 years ago, this industry was huge. The companies didn't do this job themselves anymore. They outsourced the entire expat package services to a so-called relocation management company, RMCs. They were huge global relocation companies. They were actually nothing else but also vendor managers, because what they did was they took the expat and said, listen, we are your one-stop shopping solution. We take care of your entire relocation. We will move your furnitures. We will find the house for you. We will find the school for your kids. We will find the right insurance, health insurance, everything. About 17 services included. One was language training. So I then went on in a later stage when we already were almost covering the globe. I went to all the big global relocation companies and said, listen, I want to be your one-stop shopping solution when it comes to language training. And they obviously said the same. our life is easy if we don't have to run around, find a lot of providers. If Kolanko is able to offer us the world as a one-stop shopping solution, be my guest. And that's what happened. I signed global agreements with big global relocation companies who then, when they had companies who needed service, they outsourced the language
Yeah.
part to our company.
Yeah, yeah.
And overnight, we became one of the world's leading language training vendor because we were not a school.
Yeah.
We had our network of hundreds of schools that were delivering in that country, in that city, the course that this expat needed.
Can you give us a sense of like what's the scope of a business, like at the height of a business, like what was the scope?
Yeah, millions. On our side, that was
Yeah.
just because we lived on the commission. So
Recommendation, yeah.
our commission was millions. The entire volume was obviously 10 times, actually more than 10 times more. I sold that company a few years later when actually academia came around the corner, and the owner, very wealthy Swiss family who owns academia, where I'm CEO today, 2017, they came and said, 2012, they said, Kolanko is fantastic. We want to own Kolanko. Would you consider selling Kolanko? Which I did. So actually, I got in touch with academia group where I'm CEO today, already 6 years before I became the CEO. Why? Because 2012, 2011, I sold Kolanko to Academia Group and went on. I was in Vietnam and stayed in Vietnam, but I sold Kolanko and said, okay, enough. I spent 5 years in planes and hotels flying around the world.
Yeah,
So it was enough. And then I stayed in Vietnam for a while. And after a while, I felt like going back to Switzerland. But I didn't know how because I had my life in Vietnam. I had my business in Vietnam.
And you also had a bunch of extracurricular activities, which I'll be very happy if you share, because not only were you entrepreneurial on the business side, that you did like NGO work. Like I'll be very happy if you share. Like I know the story of the first responder in Vietnam organization. So like I would love if you can have it.
SSVN, yes. My wife, I was again married to a Vietnamese lady that I met obviously in Vietnam during my time in Vietnam. And she has, thank God, she's still alive, of course. We're good friends. Said, oh, wow. Obviously, also, she came to Switzerland. We visited Switzerland, went back and forth on a regular basis. And she said, and I remember one day she said, we talked about accidents and first responder. And I said, yeah, in Switzerland, it's by law. If you want to do a driver license, by law, you have to attend a first aid course where you learn survival skills. And obviously, in every company, there is this AED box.
Yeah.
I said, wow, we don't have that in Vietnam. Actually, what happens in Vietnam when there is an accident, people would not help at all. They would stand and watch. So why? I said, because they don't know what to do. And they're afraid of causing damage. So they rather see the person die, bleed out or suffocate, or rather than approaching and making a mistake and then being responsible. So I said, then let's change that. She was delighted. She was always very much into charity, even still until today. And the idea was that we would sell survival skill trainings to companies for money and to universities and governmental institutions for free. And with the money that we get from the companies, we use the money to pay the freelance, to pay the trainers, and to pay the infrastructure, and to develop, which we did years later, and develop an app. And this app that exists now, of course, on the phone, is telling you step by step what to do. What it does is any Vietnamese with training, without training, who has the app can say the person is bleeding. Then the app says where, arm. And then he can follow the photos, the pictures, and a voice is telling him instructions how to stop the bleeding. So that's the SSVN app.
But you also and you train, and from what I remember, you literally trained the whole generation. first responders, right?
We were growing quite fast because it was very popular at the time. This is 15 years ago. And we were invited nonstop by universities to teach thousands and thousands of students. There were photos where 2 or 3 trainers we had these, do you call it in English puppets?
Yeah.
Where you can,
Yeah.
and you see in an auditorium, 1,000 students watching our trainer who is telling them how to do mouth to mouth and how to do heart massage and all this. And it was, and we, obviously the government was very happy and never helped us though, but that's another topic. Yes, it became very popular, and in the entire country, from north to south, we were invited to universities, and it's like, but to finance all this, obviously we needed the money, and the money came from the corporate side, from companies where we sold our courses, who understood that if the manufacturing, obviously we contacted mainly manufacturing companies, huge manufactories where people would do terrible things with no safety.
Yeah.
Vietnam safety was at the time very different from what we know today. They would do very risky way, no coverage of the face, no gloves. So accidents were obviously happening on a daily basis. So they understood that, okay, at least we should train our supervisor what to do if somebody's cutting off his finger, or what to do when an accident happens. Yeah.
What do you think forces you to do this? Because a lot of people would say, yeah, that's sad. Vietnam doesn't have first responders and things like that. And you go, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like that's not your average response.
Yes and no. Well, there are 2 sides to the story. One side was actually that my Vietnamese wife and I, we always really felt the strong, like this call to do something good, to do something meaningful, not only to make money, but also to do something sustainable, meaningful. The word meaningful was always very, very often came up in a lot of our conversations. And she was already at the time working for another charity called Operation Smile. I loved that charity, still exists. Operation Smile is a charity organization who is raising money for surgery of children who
Yes. Yeah.
with surgery, and it's called Operation Smile because after the surgery they can smile again.
They can smile. Yeah.
Without covering what they
face.
usually do. They cover their mouth so you wouldn't see. And she was working for Operation Smile many years, so she was very much into this. So there was this feeling of making money is one thing, to make a living, but there is more than just making a living. So, and in Vietnam, we don't have so much time, but Vietnam is a very special story. The story of the Vietnamese people after the war and surviving. And I was deeply, I think that I don't know any other country who went through such a horrible history and still are deeply connected with Buddhism, deeply connected with the nature, deeply connected with being good to each other. I mean, they're the nicest people I can imagine. I mean, it's different being a tourist and living there locally. So, and I have a big network, of course. So that was one thing. We wanted to do something meaningful. And maybe I should say that Vietnamese people are incredibly patriotic. When you talk to the Vietnamese community in Switzerland, it's amazing how strongly they feel about helping their country. They always talk about, I want to help my country. So I know a lot of activity in Switzerland of Vietnamese people married to Swiss people who dedicate a major part of their time to help Vietnam, to work in the charities. So that was part of my story anyway. And the other thing is, you probably won't be surprised, that was a business opportunity. My idea was, okay, so there is no AED in any company. Actually, in Switzerland, by law, every car has a little bag with Band-Aid and creams and the scissor. And so it's also required. It's mandatory. Every car has this bag of first aid equipment.
Yeah.
Even the motorbikes under the saddle, they also have this. So I said, wow, Imagine 100 million people in Vietnam and not one car, not one motorbike has any band-aid, any box with first aid equipment. What if I can create this box, create this equipment? And I remember I went to in Germany to one of the largest providers of this. And I said, can you, because the requirement for Vietnam is the health requirement. Obviously, the government is also involved. You cannot sell medical stuff just like this. So I was studying all the requirements and the laws and to import that stuff. So I went to the German manufacturer and I said, can you create the box of this size with this logo, and the list of the content must be exactly this. The scissor must be long like this. There must be 3 different band-aids. There must be 3 different. So, and he did it. Took us many months, I remember, many months, back and forth and back and forth. In the end, we had created the box for a car. We had created the box for home to take it home, and the bag, a little bag that you could use when you open the saddle of a motorbike, you can put it under the saddle. And we started to sell it. And that was very, very tough, very hard, because we quickly found out that there was a Chinese competitor who also tried this for very little price, very, very cheap. The products were garbage, total garbage. But since I underestimated that if there is no market for something and people don't even know what's the difference because they never saw such a first aid box before, they didn't understand why is this box $2 and this box from Switzerland is $20.
Yeah.
So their first reaction was, okay, we don't know both boxes anyway. Let's go for the $2 box. And so we were not successful because the product that we imported from Germany was obviously complete different quality at a complete different price. We couldn't convince the Vietnamese that there is a reason why our product is more expensive. So I understand, but I don't want to invest more than $2.
So let's get back to our story. You sold the company. You sold the company, and you want to go back to Switzerland. What's next?
Well, I didn't know how and when and where until I got a phone call from an old friend. Actually, it was an old customer going back 10 years before. Now we are 2013 and 2002. I was a consultant. Remember, I started as after this failure, coming back from Germany. One of my customers was a private school group who said, we want to open a franchise out our concept. But we have no franchisee in Zurich. At the time I was living in Zurich, and he said, would you have time and interest to find us a franchisee who will franchise our school concept? It was a language school concept with e-learning combined already. It was 2002. Don't forget, e-learning was new.
Yeah.
I said, sure. What's in for me? I said, yeah, we pay you commission based on the franchise fee and blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, sure. And I had a few people who I knew. And long story short, I found somebody who was a former teacher who was out of a job, and he was looking for an opportunity to open a school, a little school, very little, 4 or 5 people. I said, okay, you have no idea how to open a school and run it as a business because all your life you worked in the public school system. You're not a businessman. Here's the deal. I help you with the franchise contract with this company. You will be the Zurich franchisee, and I will set up the location. I will set up the business plan. So I actually made kind of money from both sides because the franchise provider gave me the commission for finding the franchisee, and the franchisee paid me for setting up the school, setting up the business, bank, location, infrastructure, IT, everything. But he had no money, not enough money. So I said, you know what? I have a deal for you, because his location was top. Like, I found him in the heart of Zurich near the train station, AAA location, very expensive location. But of course, people passed by the school every day. So I said, location, location, location. You rather pay more for the rent, but are in a prime location than in the middle of nowhere where nobody will ever find you. Trust me. But of course, the school in the beginning, on the first day, was empty. There were a lot of rooms. So I said, here's the deal. I know you in your business, because I wrote the business plan, you don't have money for a manager to pay. but you don't have to pay me salary. You give me a room for free, and I can use the infrastructure, the meeting room, the secretary, receptionist. I can use everything for free because remember, I went on my own 2003 after coming from Germany. So here I was in a top location in the heart of Zurich with a fantastic infrastructure for free. And then he obviously, which I was not surprised because it was part of the plan, he said, yeah, but I have to establish an Inc. And in Switzerland, for an Inc., you need a chairman. And would you be my chairman? Because I know nothing about business. I'm a teacher. So that's how it came that I became the chairman of his company with my own consulting firm and office in his
company.
business.
Yeah.
So this was the guy that called me 10 years later when I was in Vietnam, 2012. He said, hey, Andreas, where are you? I said, well, I'm actually in Ho Chi Minh City. Ah, okay, on vacation? No, I live here. Oh, wow. Here's the deal. I'm now 65. He was 55 when he opened the school. I'm 65. I want to retire. The school is pretty successful. I want to sell it, take the money and retire. But I have no clue how to sell a company. Would you do it for me? I offer you 3% commission on the sales. It was a couple of millions to sell. So I said, okay, it's easy money. I will find a buyer. Well, it turned out to be not an easy sell because nobody wanted to buy the school. At some point, I said to myself, wait a minute, this could be my ticket back to Switzerland. If I somehow, let's cross the bridge when I get there, but if I manage to buy the school, I will be instantly owner of this school. I will instantly have a job. The school was successful. I will instantly have quite a nice income. And from there, I can grow it to something completely else. Because my dear friend, Max was his name. It was, when he opened, it was a small school. And when he sold, it was successful, but still a small school. It was far from the potential that I saw. So I imagined that if I take over the school, I will grow it very quickly to something else. But I didn't have the money, so I had to find other investors, which I did. I was looking around for some people who was lending money or investing in this and become shareholder, and the bank was helping. So long story short, after a while, I had the money to buy the school. I was obviously the main shareholder, and at the same time, I was the owner and manager. And I moved back to Switzerland and I was running the schools. And again, we don't have to discuss the word luck, but I had an idea what to do with the school. My idea was there is a market that I think has a lot of potential. It's called the integration market. Language school is not so interesting. It's not sexy. I mean, there are thousands of language schools. The integration center.
What's integration centers?
Offering courses for refugees.
Oh, for refugees, okay.
By the government. That could be something. So I took over the school and started immediately to contact government departments and ask them, what if I offer you a comprehensive course that helps children who don't speak German, never went to school, to learn, read and write and speak German, and ultimately being able to go to the public school system, young adults to find an apprenticeship, adults to find a job, and they loved it. The school grew 300% within 4 years. Guess what? The same academia group that had bought Kulanko in 2012 knocked at my door 2008, said, we were watching you again, and you built this integration centers. At the time I had 7. We want to buy this too. But this time we don't only want buy your school, your integration centers. We want you to be the successor of our CEO. That was 2018. And I've been CEO of Academia Group ever since, together with my colleague who, like I said in the beginning, is together with me, we are co-CEOs of this Academia Group Corporation, which I will reside from next summer.
So that's quite a journey. A few questions. So you do, like, it sounds like you do a lot, but on top of it, you do more stuff occasionally, and you put your fits like, so like, So how do you decide what do you do that's not in, let's say, in the core? Like how do you decide what do you get involved in that is not in the education, integration, languages?
Okay, so basically there is a rule behind it. I only invest or I only accept board membership if I'm truly convinced that I can add value to the company based on my expertise, based on my network, based on my history. So, and I have basically it all comes down to three areas. One is, of course, private education.
Mm-hmm.
One is HR, because I did a lot of HR consulting and I know a lot of companies and a lot of HR managers. And number three is technology, because I always was very deep in technology. Remember, 1990 took over the e-learning company. So in all these years, I've been very much involved in tech, HR tech. So the technology side of these industries. And Polanco was also a very much technology-based company, because to manage 300 schools, a network, and to link it with the companies, we had to develop a platform. This platform was a database that was also accessible for our customers. So they could also look and see the description of the school and say, okay, this is what we want. So today, if I invest my money in companies and accept a board membership, it is always linked to technology, software development, or software linked to education, and linked to human resource management.
It's a good. So what would you say? And I'm trying to avoid the cliche when I'm asking this. Like imagine right now a younger version of Andreas is talking, right? Not yet with all the battle scars, right? So what would you wish to embark to the younger entrepreneur, right? The younger you.
I think there are a few mistakes. I really can call them mistakes that I did based on my lack of patience, that could have been avoided easily, and didn't really. I mean, there are experiences and mistakes where you can learn from, and you say, okay, it was a mistake, but at least I learned something. But I did also mistakes where all I learned was, okay, I'm an idiot. Nobody else would have done this, because I was simply too ambitious, too fast, too much wanting. I want everything and I want it now. And if I had been a little bit more patient, a little bit more.
Yeah. So let me put because it did serve you, right? Being not patient, being ambitious did serve you, right? It did also good things. So where's the line between being ambitious and letting it drive you and not being too impatient or too ambitious? Like, where would you draw the line?
The line is when you sit down, instead of doing it before thinking, sit down and say, what's the alternative? Do we really have to do this? Or is there another way to do the same, but less risk, with less money, with less exposure? And I did a few things where, in hindsight, sometimes within days or weeks, I said, oh, shit, that was a mistake. And it didn't, and all it did was I hit my head at the wall. And if somebody would have told me, I can assure you, Andreas, if you buy, let's take an easy example. Andreas, no need to buy the villa in Munich. Come on. You don't have the money yet. Yes, maybe you will be very wealthy in a few years after the IPO, but why do you want to risk so much money, millions, on a house that you can rent a house, a beautiful house? Your wife will be happy. Your children everybody will be happy. The difference is only you don't put yourself under so much pressure with such a high mortgage. And if something goes wrong, you will be in hell. Don't buy the villa, rent it. I bought it and landed in hell a few years later after 9/11. Because nobody wanted to buy a house. I couldn't sell the house. It was empty for a while, because in Germany, you can't sell a rented house. You cannot rent it out. And whilst you have tenants in a house, you can't sell because the renting law in Germany is so strict. Nobody will buy a house because you'd never get rid of the people who live in the house. So you have to have it empty. So I really literally had to pay the mortgage for an empty house for 2 years to sell it.
That's tough.
So that was a typical me mistake.
Yeah.
And similar mistakes. Unfortunately, I did similar mistakes down the road. But basically, it was always, that's not good enough. Basically, the title of this mistake is always the same. Yeah, I can rent a building, I can rent a house, but that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Because the houses that were on the renting market were not as big and not as beautiful as the villa that I bought.
Live and learn. Live and learn.
Live and learn. Thank God I didn't do this mistake again. So that's maybe the difference. If you have some intelligence, you're making mistake only once.
Well, I think it's wisdom. I think you can be really, really smart and make really, really smart mistakes. I think that's where wisdom comes in. I think that's where wisdom comes in. I think because I think
Yes.
yeah. I think that's a difference. It's an interesting thing. It's not the CPU. It's not the ability to compute and things. It's judgment is different than intelligence. Andreas, this has been wonderful. And thank you for being so open and sharing your roller coaster with us.
And of course, actually, it's funny because people who know me well say, you should write the book because once you're gone, nobody will ever know because I told you like 10% of my failures and
like literally that's actually what I'm gonna say. So to the listeners, even for my personal knowledge with Andreas, we haven't touched a lot of the things he's even doing today. So it's you do a lot.
and of course came basically like the main theme, and we left out all the side stories,
all the side stories.
Because they were around all these stories that I mentioned. There were multiple little side stories that we didn't even touch. But of course, I knew time is limited and we should focus on the main topics. But actually, there were a lot more failures and the more luck also, because ultimately there was kind of a happy end because now I'm in a kind of a comfortable place. But there was actually, it's funny, while I was talking, I said, okay, I have to say, actually, there was not immediately what happened was, but then I realized if I embark to this side story, and I will never get to the main story because the side stories alone will be.
It's just you know the saying, the map is not the terrain. Do you know the saying, the map is not the terrain? Because when we see the map, right, the map, it makes sense, right? But the map is not the actual physical terrain. That's the thing. It's only the map at best. It's a metaphor to the terrain.
Yes,
so
we
compromise. We compromise. Andreas, really pleasure. Thank you very much.
Pleasure was all mine, as always.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward for the book where you can have a chapter for all the stories, all the side stories.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed, as always, talking to you. I know I was talking more than you, but I think that was the idea. But I'm sure this is also one of the conclusions in my life. When you meet somebody, you don't know all the tragedies that this person went through.
Yes.
You don't know. You think your life was maybe harder. Your life was, there was tragedies, or your life was failures, but you have no clue behind the smiling face what tragedies this person went through.
Yes.
This is something that also makes me very respectful with people, because I think I only know my kind of tragedy, but I have no idea. Maybe this person who is rude, unfriendly, whatever, maybe this person is in a horrible place. You have no idea. Yeah. So better be careful how you treat this person, how you judge this person, because you don't know. You have no clue what this person went through or is going through. It makes you humble. Yeah. That's unfortunately a lesson that I learned very late in my life. I was not humble enough. Today, I feel like I probably could be much more. You always can be more, but to be humble is something that I learned rather late in my life after really hard lessons to understand. Like I said, people go through tragedies you have no idea.
Yeah, and hopefully a bit wiser. Hopefully we get a bit wiser.
Hopefully a bit wiser, yes. So I look forward to seeing you soon in person again. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
It's a wrap. This Haggai's podcast episode ends here, but you don't. Now, is it crazy to think that you know somebody who'd love this episode? Share it with them, and they'll love you for it.